The crystal spires of New Kithara gleamed under the twin suns, their blue light casting rainbow patterns across the peaceful city below. Elder scientist Veltana pressed her six-fingered hands against the warm observation window, watching her people go about their daily lives. Children played in the floating gardens while adults tended to the living buildings that grew like coral from the planet's surface. Everything was perfect as it had been for 300 cycles. Then the alarms began to wail. Veltana's assistant, a young male named Kira Eth, burst into her laboratory chamber. His usually calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something that Kithara rarely experienced: terror. "Elder, you must come to the communication center immediately," he said, his voice trembling through the translation device. "The outer colonies, they're gone." Veltana felt her heart skip a beat. The Kithara had two hearts, a necessity for their large frames, but right now both seemed to stop working entirely. She followed Kira Eth through the organic corridors of their research facility, past walls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns and floors that adjusted their texture for optimal walking comfort. The communication center was chaos. Dozens of Kithara technicians worked frantically at their biostations, tentacles dancing over controls that responded to touch and thought. The main display showed a three-dimensional map of their confederation, and Veltana gasped when she saw it. Red markers covered what had once been green dots representing their outer worlds. "Report," she commanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Senior technician Mordal turned to face her, his large eyes filled with fear. "Elder, we lost contact with Harmony Station 6 hours ago. Then Crystal Falls went silent. Now we're getting emergency transmissions from the Peaceful Valley colony, but..." He paused, struggling with words. "The images they're sending, I don't understand them. Show me." The main display shifted and Veltana saw something that would haunt her dreams forever. The beautiful crystal cities of Peaceful Valley were burning. But these weren't normal fires. Black shapes moved through the destruction, too fast for the cameras to capture clearly. What she could see made her sick. These creatures were massive, insectoid, with razor-sharp appendages that cut through crystal like soft clay. "The HFY," whispered another technician. "It has to be the HFY swarm." The name sent ripples of fear through the room. Every civilized species knew the stories. The HFY were the nightmare that lived in space between the stars. They consumed everything in their path, turning peaceful worlds into breeding grounds for more of their kind. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They simply destroyed. "How many colonies have we lost?" Veltana asked. 12 confirmed, Elder. And they're moving toward the core worlds. At their current speed, they'll reach New Kithara in 15 cycles. 15 cycles. Less than 2 weeks to live. Veltana closed her eyes and thought quickly. The Kithara Confederation had never needed weapons. They had no military, no soldiers, no concept of warfare beyond ancient historical texts. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not combat. They had spent centuries building a society based on peace, cooperation, and scientific advancement. Now that very success would be their doom. "What about the Galactic Council?" she asked. "Have we contacted them?" Mordal's expression grew even more grim. "We sent a formal request for aid 6 hours ago. The Council responded that they are reviewing the situation and will provide an answer within 30 cycles. Too late. Far too late. What about the other Confederation members? The peaceful builders are evacuating their core worlds. The gentle gardeners have closed their borders and refuse all communication. The Harmony Singers..." Mordal paused. "The Harmony Singers voted to surrender to the HFY and hope for mercy." Veltana felt a crushing weight in her chest. The great alliance that had brought peace to this sector of the galaxy was crumbling. Each species was thinking only of itself, abandoning their allies in the face of certain death. She walked to the central communication console and placed her hands on the bio-interface. The warm living metal responded to her touch, connecting her directly to the Confederation's most powerful transmission array. "Elder, what are you doing?" Kira Eth asked. "Something that may damn us all," she replied. Veltana began composing a message unlike any the Kithara had ever sent. Not a formal diplomatic request or a scientific inquiry, but a desperate plea for help from anyone who would listen. "To any species capable of receiving this transmission," she began, her words being translated into hundreds of languages and broadcast across known space. "This is Elder Scientist Veltana of the Kithara Confederation. We are under attack by the HFY swarm. Our colonies are falling. Our people are dying. We have no weapons, no soldiers, no way to defend ourselves. The Galactic Council moves too slowly. Our allies have abandoned us." She paused, struggling with what to say next. The words she was about to speak went against everything the Kythera believed in. "We know that violence is wrong. We know that taking life is the greatest sin. But our children are dying and we cannot save them. If there is anyone out there with the power to stop the HFY, please help us. We will pay any price, accept any terms if you will save our people." The message included detailed information about the HFY movements, tactical data from the fallen colonies, and star charts showing their projected path of destruction. It was everything a potential rescuer would need to mount a defense. "Broadcasting now," Mordal announced. The message shot out across space at faster-than-light speeds, carried by the quantum communication network that connected most civilized worlds. Within hours, it would reach thousands of species across the galaxy. "Now we wait," Veltana said. The responses began arriving within the first hour. Most were automated replies expressing sympathy, but explaining why the sender could not provide military assistance. The careful traders said they had no warships. The wise scholars claimed neutrality in all conflicts. The artistic creators offered to preserve Kythera culture in their museums after the extinction. One by one, the replies came in. All refusals, all apologies, all death sentences. As the hours passed, Veltana began to lose hope. The galaxy was full of peaceful species like her own, creatures who had evolved beyond violence and war. None of them had the tools to fight something like the HFY. The few species who did have military capabilities were either too far away or too cautious to risk their own safety. Then, 18 hours after the transmission, something different arrived. "Elder," Mordal called out, his voice strange. "We're receiving a response, but the language isn't in our databases. Show me." The display filled with symbols that looked harsh and angular, completely unlike the flowing scripts used by most civilized species. The translation computers worked frantically, comparing the message against every known language in their vast databases. Slowly, words began to appear. Message received. "Fleet en route. Hold position. Humans coming." Veltana stared at the screen. Humans? I've never heard of this species. Kiraeth was already working at his station, searching through their scientific databases. "Elder, I found a reference. There are warnings about them in the Galactic Council's restricted files. They're listed as Deathworlders." The term meant nothing to Veltana, but something about it sent chills through her body. "What does that mean?" Kiraeth's face went pale as he read further. According to this, they evolved on a planet called Earth. It's classified as a Class 12 death world. The warnings say they're extremely dangerous and should be avoided at all costs. Veltana looked back at the harsh symbols on the screen. She had asked for help from anyone who could fight the HFY. Apparently, someone had answered. The question was, had she just saved her people or doomed them to something worse than extinction? Outside the window, the twin suns continued to shine on New Kythera's crystal spires, but Veltana could no longer see their beauty. All she could think about was the word that kept repeating in her mind, Deathworlders. 3 days had passed since the human response, and the Kythera monitoring stations detected something approaching their system. Veltana stood in the orbital command center above New Kythera, watching the long-range sensors with growing unease. "Elder, the approaching fleet is unusual," reported scan technician Yelandra, her voice tight with concern. "The ship designs don't match anything in our databases." Veltana moved to the primary display and immediately understood the technician's worry. Where Kythera vessels were graceful curves of living crystal and organic metal, these approaching ships looked like weapons themselves. Angular hulls bristled with what could only be gun turrets. The largest vessel displayed a profile that seemed designed to intimidate rather than explore. "How many ships?" she asked. 47 confirmed contacts, Elder, ranging from small fighters to that. Yelandra highlighted the massive central vessel. "Our computers estimate it's over 2 kilometers long, 2 kilometers of what appeared to be pure military might." Veltana had never seen anything like it. Even the Galactic Council's peacekeeping vessels were elegant things designed to project authority through presence, not raw firepower. "Are they responding to our communication attempts?" "Yes, Elder. We're receiving a transmission now. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Veltana was looking at something that made her step backward in shock. The creature on the screen was clearly intelligent, but it looked like it had evolved from predators. Two forward-facing eyes, teeth designed for tearing meat, and most disturbing of all, an expression that seemed to suggest it found violence amusing. "This is Captain Sarah, Chen of the United Earth ship Indomitable," the creature said in a voice that the translators rendered as calm but somehow threatening. "We received your distress call regarding the Vex High incursion. We're here to help." Veltana forced herself to approach the communication panel. "This is Elder Scientist Veltana of New Kythera. We appreciate your response to our plea." "No problem," Captain Chen replied with what the translators identified as a smile, though the expression showed far too many sharp teeth. "We've dealt with hive mind species before. The Vex High shouldn't be too much trouble." Too much trouble? The Vex High had destroyed 12 colonies in as many days, and this human spoke of them like they were a minor inconvenience. "Captain Chen, with respect, I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. The Vex High have never been successfully opposed. They consume everything in their path." The human's smile grew wider. "Elder Veltana, I don't think you understand what you called for help. We're not peacekeepers or negotiators. We're the species other species call when they need something killed efficiently." The casual way she spoke about killing made Veltana's stomach turn. Perhaps we should discuss strategy. Could you dock with our station?" "Negative. Your docking facilities aren't compatible with our ship designs. Too many weapons arrays would interfere with your systems. We'll send a shuttle." 20 minutes later, Veltana watched through the observation port as a human shuttle approached. Even their small craft looked aggressive, covered in armor plating and equipped with what appeared to be defensive weapons. What kind of species built weapons into their taxi services? The airlock cycled, and Veltana got her first look at humans in person. Captain Chen was smaller than expected, but something about her movement suggested coiled violence. She wore what appeared to be armor disguised as a uniform, and Veltana noted that even in a diplomatic meeting, the human carried what was obviously a weapon at her side. "Elder Veltana," Chen said, extending her hand in what the cultural database identified as a greeting gesture. "Good to meet you face to face." Veltana carefully touched the human's hand with her fingertips, shocked by how warm and rough the skin felt. "Captain Chen, thank you for coming so far to help us." "Like I said, no problem. Now let's talk about your bug situation." "Bug situation?" The translators struggled with the casual dismissal of a species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Chen activated a holographic projector that materialized detailed tactical displays in the air. "We've been monitoring Vex High communications since we entered the system. They're using pretty standard hive mind coordination protocols. Nothing we haven't seen before." "You've fought hive minds before?" Veltana asked, amazed. "Oh sure. Borg, Zerg, Tyranids, all kinds of swarming species. The trick is identifying the command nodes and taking them out first. Cuts off the head, and the body dies." The human spoke about genocide as if discussing gardening techniques. "Captain Chen, these are sentient beings. Surely there must be some way to communicate. To negotiate." Chen's expression shifted, and for a moment Veltana saw something that chilled her to the bone. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was pity. "Elder, I've read your species profile. You've never had to fight for survival, have you? Your world was peaceful. You evolved from prey animals that survived through cooperation rather than competition." "Yes, and we're proud of that achievement. I'm sure you are. But the Vex High evolved differently. They're apex predators who survive by consuming everything else. They literally cannot coexist with other life forms. Their biology won't allow it." Chen manipulated the display, showing detailed scans of Vex High biology. "Look at this. Their digestive system requires living protein to function. They can't eat dead meat. They have to consume their prey while it's still alive. Their reproduction cycle requires implanting eggs in living hosts from other species. They're not evil, Elder. They're just built to be incompatible with civilization." Veltana studied the data, horror growing in her mind. But surely science could find a solution. Maybe given a few centuries of research. "Do you have a few centuries?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. "No? Then we do this the human way." Chen brought up new displays showing fleet formations and tactical assessments. "We've identified 17 primary hive ships in this sector. Each one controls approximately 50,000 smaller vessels. Standard doctrine will be surgical strikes against command structures, followed by systematic elimination of remaining forces. You're talking about destroying an entire species. Yes. Chen's response was immediate and unapologetic. The Vexhai made that choice when they decided to genocide yours. We're just better at it than they are. Veltana felt dizzy. How can you speak of mass destruction so casually? Because that's what humans do, Elder. We're really, really good at killing things. It's why we survived on a planet where literally everything was trying to eat us. It's why we developed weapons before we developed medicine. It's why other species call us Deathworlders and warn their children about us in bedtime stories. The human's tone wasn't boastful or cruel. She spoke like someone explaining a simple fact of nature. When peaceful species like yours encounter an existential threat, you have two choices. Chen continued. You can die with dignity, or you can call the monsters who live on the edge of space and ask them to fight your monsters for you. And you answered. We always answer. Not because we're nice, but because we like fighting. And the Vexhai look like they'll put up a good fight. Chen stood to leave, then paused at the airlock. Elder, I need you to understand something. My species has rules about collateral damage and civilian casualties. We'll be as careful as possible, but we're about to turn this star system into a war zone. Keep your people away from the combat areas, and whatever you do, don't interfere with our operations. What if we want to help? The human's laugh was genuinely amused. Elder, your fastest warship couldn't keep up with our supply vessels. Your most powerful weapons couldn't scratch our shuttle's paint. The kindest thing you can do is stay out of our way and let us work. After the humans left, Veltana stood alone in the docking bay, staring at the scorch marks their shuttle's engines had left on the floor. Even their exhaust was more aggressive than Kythera technology. She had asked for salvation, and the universe had sent her something that scared her almost as much as the Vexhai themselves. The difference was that these Deathworlders were on her side. She hoped that would be enough. Outside the station, the human fleet moved into formation with mechanical precision, their weapons already powering up for the coming battle. The first engagement came 18 hours after the human fleet took position around New Kythera. Veltana watched from the orbital station's command center as sensors detected incoming Vexhai forces. 3 hive ships accompanied by over 200 smaller vessels, moving in the perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable. The humans are moving to intercept, reported Yelandra, her voice tight with fear. But Elder, they're badly outnumbered. Veltana studied the tactical display. The human force consisted of only 12 ships against the Vexhai swarm. It looked like suicide. Are they requesting assistance? She asked. No, Elder. In fact, they've ordered all Kythera vessels to maintain minimum safe distance. On the screen, the two fleets approached each other with deadly purpose. The Vexhai moved in their typical formation, a solid wall of ships advancing like a living organism. The humans spread out in a pattern that made no sense to Kythera military theory. Why are they separating? Veltana wondered aloud. They're making themselves easier targets. She got her answer moments later when the shooting started. The Vexhai opened fire first, sending waves of bioplasma toward the human ships. Veltana expected to see the humans destroyed instantly, but something impossible happened instead. The human vessels moved, not the graceful turns of Kythera ships or the efficient course corrections of Galactic Council vessels. The humans moved like living things, twisting and diving through space in patterns that seemed to defy physics. They dodged between plasma bolts with inches to spare, their hulls glowing from near misses. How are they doing that? Yelandra whispered. Their acceleration rates are impossible, another technician added. Our sensors show they're pulling over 20 gravities in some of those turns. 20 gravities. The force would liquefy any Kythera pilot, but the humans seemed unaffected. If anything, they appeared to be enjoying themselves. Then the humans returned fire. Veltana had never seen weapons like these. Not the elegant energy beams of civilized warfare, but crude, violent projectiles that tore through Vexhai hulls like tissue paper. The humans used missiles that seemed to think for themselves, chasing their targets through evasive maneuvers. They fired streams of metal that moved so fast they appeared as solid lines of light. Those are kinetic weapons, observed Senior Technician Mordal with horror in his voice. They're throwing chunks of metal at each other. But it was working. The first Vexhai ship exploded in a ball of green flame as human missiles found its reactor core. Then another died as a stream of projectiles punched through its entire length. The Vexhai are changing formation, Yolandra reported. They're trying to surround the humans. It was a logical tactic. The Vexhai had superior numbers, so they attempted to use them. But as their swarm spread out to envelop the human fleet, something unexpected happened. The humans split up. Individual human ships broke formation and dove into the Vexhai swarm, firing in all directions. It should have been suicide. Instead, it became a slaughter. "Computer, magnify Sector 7, Veltana ordered. The display zoomed in on a single human destroyer as it carved through a formation of Vexhai fighters. The human ship moved like a dancer, spinning and rolling while its weapons never stopped firing. Vexhai vessels exploded around it like fireworks. "Elder, I'm reading something strange," Mordal announced. "Audio transmissions from the human ships. Put it through the speakers." The command center filled with something Veltana had never heard before: human war songs. The Deathworlders were singing as they fought, their voices harmonizing over the thunder of their weapons. "They're enjoying this," she whispered in disbelief. The battle continued for 3 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Vexhai fought with the cold efficiency of a hive mind, but the humans fought with passion, creativity, and what appeared to be genuine joy. Every time the Vexhai adapted to a human tactic, the humans invented something new. When the Vexhai tried to ram a human ship, the humans let them get close and then teleported nuclear warheads directly onto the enemy hull. When the Vexhai released fighter swarms, the humans deployed weapons that fired thousands of tiny projectiles in expanding clouds of death. Most disturbing of all, human ships actually flew inside the Vexhai hive vessels and fought their way through the corridors. The sensors showed human soldiers moving through the organic passages of enemy ships, destroying them from within. "They're boarding hostile vessels during combat," Mordal reported, his voice filled with disbelief, "while the ships are shooting at each other." When the last Vexhai ship exploded, the human fleet regrouped with casual efficiency. They had destroyed over 200 enemy vessels and 3 hive ships, while losing exactly 0 of their own craft. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication system, and she sounded slightly out of breath but pleased. "New Cathera Orbital Station, this is Captain Chen. Sector is clear. We're moving to intercept the main Vexhai force." "Captain," Veltana replied, struggling to find words. "That was incredible. How did you achieve such a decisive victory?" "Oh, that was just a scouting force. Wait until you see what we do to their main fleet." The casual dismissal of what had been the most one-sided battle in recorded history left Veltana speechless. These humans had just achieved something no species had ever done. They had defeated the Vexhai in open combat, and they acted like it was routine. "Captain, if I may ask, how did your pilots survive those acceleration forces?" "Our readings showed maneuvers that should have been fatal. Gravity compensation systems and genetic modifications for high G tolerance. Standard equipment for combat pilots. Every human military vessel is designed for this kind of maneuvering. Genetic modifications. They had changed their own biology to become better at warfare." "Elder," Yolandra called out, "we're receiving reports from the outer colonies. The Vexhai forces there are retreating." "Retreating? The Vexhai never retreat. They are now. Long-range sensors show them consolidating their forces and pulling back toward their main staging area." Captain Chen's voice returned. "That's right. We transmitted footage of this engagement to all Vexhai forces in the system. They're regrouping because they finally understand what they're up against." "What do you mean?" "The Vexhai have never faced a species that's better at warfare than they are. They've spent their entire existence as the apex predators of space. Now they've met something higher on the food chain." Veltana looked at the tactical display where the human fleet was already moving toward the next engagement zone. Their ships moved with predatory grace, weapons charged and ready. "Captain Chen, what happens now?" "Now? Now we show them what happens when you threaten species under human protection. Elder, you might want to keep your long-range sensors pointed away from the combat zone. What we're about to do isn't pretty." "Are you going to destroy them all?" "Every last one. The Vexhai made this a war of extinction. We're just better at extinction than they are." The transmission ended, leaving Veltana alone with her thoughts. She had called for help from anyone willing to fight the Vexhai. She had gotten her wish. The humans weren't just willing to fight. They were eager for it. They had turned warfare into an art form, and they practiced it with the enthusiasm of artists who had finally found the perfect canvas. As she watched the human fleet disappear into faster-than-light travel, heading toward the main Vexhai force, Veltana realized something that chilled her to the bone. The galaxy's greatest nightmare wasn't the Vexhai swarm, it was whatever could make the Vexhai retreat in terror, and that something was coming to dinner. 2 weeks after the first engagement, Veltana stood in the communications center receiving reports that defied everything she knew about warfare. The human fleet had moved systematically through Vexhai territory, and the results were unlike anything in galactic history. Elder, we're receiving confirmation from the Harmony Delta system, reported Mordal, his voice hollow with shock. The Vexhai breeding world there has been sterilized. Sterilized. Such a clinical word for what the reports described. Veltana studied the sensor data from the distant system, trying to understand what she was seeing. The entire planet is lifeless, Yolandra added. Not just the Vexhai, everything, plants, bacteria, even the microorganisms in the soil. Nothing lives there anymore. Veltana activated the long-range communication array. Captain Chen, this is Elder Veltana. We're receiving disturbing reports from the Harmony Delta system. The response came after a brief delay. Elder, this is Admiral Rodriguez aboard the U.S. Retribution. Captain Chen is leading ground operations on Vexhai Prime. I'll be handling communications. A new voice, but the same casual tone when discussing wholesale destruction. Admiral, our sensors indicate that you've rendered an entire world uninhabitable. Affirmative. The planet was a Vexhai breeding facility with over 50 billion eggs in various stages of development. We used a Class 7 biological agent to ensure complete sterilization. You created a weapon that kills all life? We have weapons that kill all life. Weapons that kill only specific species. Weapons that kill only males or only females. Weapons that target specific genetic markers. Elder, your species has had peace for so long that you've forgotten what war actually means. Veltana felt sick. Admiral, surely there must have been another way. Would you prefer we had allowed 50 billion Vexhai to mature and spread across the galaxy? Each one of those eggs would have become a creature that needs to eat living sentience to survive. The logic was sound, but the scale of destruction horrified her. What about the other worlds? Industrial complexes producing Vexhai war machinery have been eliminated using kinetic bombardment. Hive ships under construction were destroyed with nuclear weapons. Command and control centers were taken out by our Special Forces teams. Special Forces? Human soldiers specially trained for operations behind enemy lines. They infiltrated 17 different Vexhai installations, gathered intelligence and eliminated key targets. Veltana tried to imagine Kithara attempting such missions and failed completely. Her people couldn't even conceive of deliberately entering enemy territory with the intent to kill. Admiral, we're receiving casualty reports from across Vexhai space. The numbers are staggering. War tends to produce casualties, Elder. The difference is that these are all enemy casualties. All of them? Haven't you lost any of your own people? 17 wounded, 2 killed in action. Both deaths were the result of a reactor accident, not enemy fire. Veltana stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were conducting a campaign of systematic genocide against a species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and they had lost 2 people to industrial accidents. How is that possible? Superior technology, better tactics, and more experience. The Vexhai are effective against peaceful species, but they've never fought a military force designed specifically for this kind of war. Over the following days, reports continued to arrive from across the sector. The human campaign was unlike anything in recorded history. They didn't just defeat Vexhai forces, they erased them. Entire fleets vanished without sending distress calls. Colonies that had existed for millennia became empty space. But it was the methods that truly disturbed Veltana. She learned about weapons that could cause stars to become unstable, devices that could manipulate gravity to crush entire moons, and something called planet crackers that could split worlds in half. Elder, Kireth approached her with a datapad, his expression troubled. I've been analyzing the human military transmissions we've intercepted. I don't think you're going to like what I've found. Show me. The datapad displayed translation matrices for human military communications. What Veltana read made her question everything she thought she knew about the species that had come to save them. These are songs? She asked. Combat hymns according to our linguistic analysis. They sing about battles from their history, victories against other species, the glory of warfare. Elder, I don't think they see war as a necessary evil. I think they see it as entertainment. Veltana read through the translations of human military songs, tales of ancient battles, celebrations of victorious generals, anthems about dying gloriously in combat. Every human military unit seemed to have its own collection of songs about killing and conquest. Computer, open a channel to Admiral Rodriguez. Admiral, I need to ask you something directly. Do humans enjoy warfare? The response came without hesitation. Of course. War is the ultimate test of a species' capabilities. It drives innovation, reveals character, and determines which civilizations deserve to survive. That's a terrifying philosophy. It's an honest one. Elder, your species has been asking the wrong question. You keep wondering if there was another way to handle the HFY. The real question is why no other species in the galaxy was capable of stopping them. Because we're civilized. We've evolved beyond violence. No, you've evolved beyond the ability to defend yourselves. There's a difference. The Admiral paused, and when he continued, his tone was almost gentle. Elder, I've been reviewing the galactic political situation. Do you know how many wars have been fought in this sector over the past 1,000 years? None. We've maintained perfect peace. Exactly. And do you know why? Veltana thought about it. Because we're all reasonable beings who prefer negotiation to conflict. Because nothing has challenged you. The HFY are the first real threat your Confederation has faced, and look how quickly it collapsed. Every species for itself. No mutual defense, no military alliance. You maintained peace because you were never truly tested. The words stung because they rang true. When the crisis came, the great alliance of peaceful species had crumbled immediately. But you answered our call, Veltana said. We did, and after we're done with the HFY, we're going to make sure this sector stays peaceful. Not through treaties or good intentions, but through the certainty that anyone who threatens our friends will face the same fate as the HFY. You're talking about conquest. We're talking about protection. There's a difference, though I admit the end result looks similar. A new voice cut into the transmission. Admiral, this is Captain Chen. HFY Prime has fallen. The species is extinct. All hive ships destroyed, all breeding facilities sterilized, all command structures eliminated. Just like that. An entire species gone. Veltana felt a moment of vertigo as she realized she was listening to the end of a galactic nightmare. Acknowledged, Captain. Begin Phase 2 operations. What's Phase 2? Veltana asked. Cleanup and reconstruction. We're establishing monitoring stations throughout former HFY territory to ensure nothing like this happens again. We're also going to help you rebuild your damaged colonies. That's very generous. It's practical. We need stable allies in this sector. And peaceful species make excellent trading partners. But Elder, there's something you need to understand about the new situation. What? The galaxy just watched a species that no one could stop get completely annihilated in 3 weeks. Every government, every military, every potential threat is going to be asking the same question. What happens if those humans decide we're the problem? Veltana felt a chill run through her body. And what's the answer? The same thing that happened to the HFY. The only difference is how quickly they surrender. The transmission ended, leaving Veltana alone with the implications of what had just occurred. The Kythera had called for salvation and they had received it. But in the process, they had introduced something into the galaxy that might be more dangerous than anything they had faced before. The humans had saved them, but who would save the galaxy from the humans? 6 months after the last HFY ship had been destroyed, Veltana stood before the assembled Galactic Council on the neutral world of Concordia. The great chamber housed representatives from over 300 species, all gathered to address what the official records called the human question. She looked out at the sea of diverse faces, the crystalline architects, the gaseous philosophers, the photosynthetic gardeners, and dozens of other peaceful species. All of them were terrified. Elder Veltana, spoke Council Prime Zeratok, a dignified member of the Ancient Observers. You have been called to provide testimony regarding the human intervention in your system. Please describe the events as you witnessed them. Veltana activated the holographic display showing star charts of the former HFY territory, where once red markers had indicated hive worlds and breeding facilities. Now there were only green dots marking human monitoring stations. Honored Council, she began, when we sent our desperate plea for help, We expected perhaps a small peacekeeping force or technical assistance. What we received was something else entirely. The display shifted to show combat footage from the human campaign. Even edited for the sensibilities of peaceful species, the images were disturbing. Human ships moving with impossible speed, weapons that tore through Vex-High hulls like paper, and the final shots of dead worlds. The humans didn't just defeat the Vex-High, Veltana continued. They eliminated them completely. An entire species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries ceased to exist in 3 weeks. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew the basic facts, but hearing them spoken aloud by someone who had witnessed the events made them more real. "What was their behavior toward your people?" asked Representative Malveth of the careful traders. "Respectful but distant. They provided protection, assisted with rebuilding our damaged colonies, and established trade agreements that favor our reconstruction efforts. They've been model allies." "And their military presence in your system?" "Minimal. A single monitoring station and a small patrol fleet. Nothing threatening to civilian traffic." Council Prime Zeratok leaned forward. "Elder Veltana, in your opinion, do the humans represent a threat to galactic peace?" It was the question everyone wanted answered. Veltana had spent months thinking about it, analyzing every interaction with the human forces, every conversation with their officers. "That depends," she said finally, "on how you define peace." The chamber fell silent. "If you mean the absence of conflict, then no. Since the humans eliminated the Vex-High, this entire sector has been more peaceful than it has ever been. Piracy has dropped to zero. Border disputes have been resolved through negotiation. No one dares to threaten their neighbors." "And if we define peace differently?" prompted the Council Prime. "If you mean the freedom to act without consequence, then yes, they represent the greatest threat the galaxy has ever seen." Veltana manipulated the display to show the current political situation. The humans have established what they call protection agreements with 47 systems in this sector. None of these agreements were forced, but none were refused either. "Because everyone is afraid," observed Representative Yilmoth of the Gentle Gardeners. "Because everyone has seen what happens to species that threaten human allies," Veltana corrected. "The humans don't conquer. They don't need to. They simply make it clear that aggression will be met with overwhelming force." A new voice spoke from the gallery. "May I address the council?" Everyone turned to see Admiral Rodriguez entering the chamber, flanked by 2 human officers. The humans were unarmed and wearing dress uniforms, but their very presence changed the atmosphere in the room. "Admiral Rodriguez," Council Prime Zeratok said carefully, "this is unexpected. The council is in closed session. I apologize for the interruption, but I believe you're discussing matters that directly concern my government. We'd like to present our formal application for council membership." The silence that followed was deafening. No one had expected this. "Admiral," the Council Prime said slowly, "the application process for council membership is complex. It requires unanimous approval and extensive review of the applicant species' commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes." Rodriguez smiled the same predatory smile that had so unnerved Veltana months earlier. "We understand. That's why we've prepared a comprehensive presentation." The human activated his own holographic display, showing detailed charts and statistical analyses. "Since establishing our protection network in this sector, violent conflicts have decreased by 97%. Trade has increased by 300%. Scientific cooperation between species has reached historic highs. Through intimidation," accused Representative Falker of the Harmony Builders. "Through clarity," Rodriguez corrected. "Every species in this sector now understands the consequences of aggression. They're free to pursue peaceful development, scientific advancement, cultural exchange, or any other activity they choose. They're simply not free to attack their neighbors. And if they do, then they face us." The simple statement carried more weight than any threat or ultimatum. The humans had proven they could eliminate an entire species in 3 weeks. The implication was clear. "Admiral," Council Prime Zeratok said, "your species' approach to conflict resolution is direct. Many council members are concerned about the precedent this sets." "What precedent?" "That aggression has consequences, that peaceful species deserve protection from predators, that some problems can only be solved through force." Rodriguez gestured to the assembled representatives. "Honorable Council, with respect, your current approach nearly resulted in the complete extinction of the Cathera Confederation. While you were reviewing the situation, billions of innocent beings were dying. We follow proper procedures. You follow procedures designed for a galaxy where everyone agrees to be reasonable. But what happens when someone doesn't agree? What happens when you face an enemy that can't be negotiated with, can't be reasoned with, and won't stop until you're all dead? The question hung in the air like a challenge. You call for help, Admiral Rodriguez continued, and hope that someone like us answers. Veltana stood up from her testimony chair. If I may, Honored Counsel, I'd like to share my final conclusions about the human intervention. She activated her own display, showing before and after images of New Cathara. The crystalline cities gleamed as beautifully as ever, but now they were protected by discreet monitoring stations and patrol routes. The humans saved us, not just from the HFY, but from our own inability to defend ourselves. Yes, they're dangerous. Yes, they're capable of terrible destruction. But they're also the reason my grandchildren will grow up in a universe where being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless. She turned to face the council directly. The question isn't whether the humans are dangerous. They obviously are. The question is whether we want that danger pointed at our enemies or at us. Admiral Rodriguez nodded respectfully. The choice is yours, Honored Counsel. You can approve our membership and work with us to maintain peace through strength. Or you can reject our application and hope that the next existential threat you face will be as understanding as we are. The vote took 3 hours of closed deliberation. When Council Prime Zeratok returned to announce the results, his expression was grave. The Galactic Council votes to approve human membership by unanimous consent. Welcome to the community of civilized species, Admiral Rodriguez. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The galaxy's greatest predators had just been officially recognized as a civilized species. After the ceremony, Veltana found herself walking with Admiral Rodriguez through the gardens of Concordia. The human seemed relaxed now that the political formalities were complete. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. Did you really save us because you wanted to help or because you saw an opportunity to gain influence in galactic politics? Rodriguez considered the question seriously. Does it matter? The HFY are gone, your people are safe, and the galaxy is more peaceful than it's been in centuries. Sometimes good results matter more than good intentions. But now everyone is afraid of you. Fear isn't always a bad thing, Elder. Fear keeps people honest. Fear makes them think twice before starting wars they can't win. Fear of consequences is what civilization is built on. They walked in silence for a while, past flowering plants from dozens of worlds and fountains that sang in harmonious frequencies. What happens now? Veltana asked. Now we do what humans have always done. We protect what we care about. We explore what we don't understand, and we face whatever challenges come next. And if other species decide they don't want human protection? Admiral Rodriguez smiled, and for once it didn't look predatory. It looked almost sad. Then they're free to make that choice. But Elder, the universe is a dangerous place. There are threats out there that make the HFY look like a minor nuisance. When those threats emerge, and they will emerge, the galaxy is going to need protectors who are willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Protectors like humans. Protectors like humans. As they reached the end of the garden path, Veltana turned to look back at the council building where representatives from hundreds of species were learning to live in a galaxy where peace was maintained by the species everyone feared most.